Hey, P Squared Squad. It is your girl, Prophetess Ree, and I'm back with another episode of the Pretty and Powerful podcast. I want to send a huge hug and thank you to all of you who have been watching and listening and sharing this podcast. I really appreciate you, and I don't take you for granted. For all of you who are new to the podcast, welcome to the podcast. I pray that something that is said on today is going to bless you. And do me a favor, if it does, let other people know. Invite some other people to watch and to listen to the broadcast so that they can also be poured into and be mentored. On this episode of the Pretty and Powerful podcast, I have another great topic for you. Today's topic is don't despise your beginning. I know if you're like me, when you first began on your journey to whatever it is you're doing, whether it be ministry, your career, you wanted to go from the beginning right to the end. You didn't want to have to go through the process. You didn't want to have to grow and stretch. And sometimes your beginning looks nothing like your end point. And so on this afternoon, I have a wonderful woman of God with me. Her name is Pastor Cesslye Bob, and she is the associate pastor of Christian education at Greater Grace in Houston, Texas. And she's been holding that position since 2014. So I want you to give her a big hey girl, hey, and welcome her to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me on today, Pastor Cesslye.
Thank you so much, Prophetess Sherry, for having me. Just as you said, I am the associate pastor of the Christian Education Department at Greater Grace Houston, whose senior pastor is Bishop E.L. Usher. And so the Christian Education Department includes new members. It includes the training and development of ministerial leaders and also Sunday school curriculum.
Oh, that's wonderful. So that means you have a lot of great information to pour into the women who are listening on today. One thing that I really loved is when I found out that you were pastor of Christian education, because that is something that we don't have enough of in the church. People really being educated on what they believe and why they believe what they believe. And so I know that you have a wealth of knowledge to pour into us on today. Can you tell me a little bit about how you began in ministry? Did you know you were always called to ministry?
Actually, I didn't always know that I was called. When I started going to college, I went to Houston Baptist University for 3 years. And during that time, I really began to feel a drawing and a wooing from God that there was a calling on my life, but I didn't really know what that was or what it would look like. I just found myself suddenly surrounded by a lot of people that had fivefold callings, and they knew who they were in God, but I didn't. I wasn't raised in church like that. I grew up as a Catholic, but I wasn't aware of fivefold gifts. I wasn't aware of charismatic churches or Pentecostal environments. And so it wasn't until 2007 when I took a class, called Purpose and Destiny. And I took it in 2007. And Purpose and Destiny really is in search of purpose and en route to destiny. And the leader here, regional leader here in Houston, Texas, is Apostle Phyllis Fuller. And when I took that 14-week appointment with God, and I just shut out the rest of the world, I went on a 40-day consecration, no television, no news. I couldn't even tell you what was going on. And I just had an appointed time to meet with God every day. And during that time, he gave me an open vision and showed me who I was in him. And he allowed me to see that he had called me to be a pastor, but I wasn't really quite sure what kind of pastor that would be. He showed me that I was called to be a teacher, but I wasn't sure what all that would be entailed. And so throughout the end of that class, that 14-week appointment with God, when the prophets spoke over us, because they have a few prophets that speak over you and declare what God is saying about you at that season, the prophets confirmed what God has shown me in private.
Wow.
Having never met me before, having never seen me before, didn't know anything about me, and I didn't know anything about them. But to hear God confirm what he has shown me in private
Yes.
forever blessed my life. And
Mm.
I knew that no matter what happened, I had to fulfill the purpose and destiny that God had for me.
Wow. Wow, that is such a powerful testimony. I relate to you so much when you said I wasn't raised in church like that, because that's my story as well. And I think some people become discouraged because they think that they're, and I know I personally dealt with this. I felt like I was not qualified because I didn't have
Right,
a certain background. So I had already disqualified myself before God really had the opportunity to show me. And even after he showed me, I had to really allow the Holy Spirit to help me to deal with those insecurities of saying, well, I wasn't raised in church, and you know, I didn't
right,
have this mentor, and I didn't have this opportunity and that opportunity. But allowing God to really take us along the journey and to start us the way he wants to start us based off of where he is going to take us. So let that be encouragement to those of you who are listening, that your
yes,
beginning is for a reason. God has you start the way you start because there was something that he needs you to go through and experience, and there's a
exactly.
perspective that he wants you to have that is going to be connected to your calling. So once you did discover, you know, that you had this purpose to be a teacher and you were called to ministry, what did you do after that? Did you say, okay, let me go find a church where I can be groomed, or were you already in a church? How did that look?
I was already a part of a church, but to be honest, the church that I was a part of at that time, I knew with that kind of assignment, I wasn't going to get what I needed to be mentored and developed. So
Mm,
I really began to seek the Lord about what I needed to do, how I needed to move.
hmm.
And at the time, I was working with an old friend of mine, and she had recently joined Greater Grace Outreach Church, which is Greater Grace Houston. And I saw the growth that was taking place in her life, how she was so on fire for God. She had all this passion that she had never had before. She was coming to work and she was asking me all these questions. And I'm like, my God, the Lord is really doing a work in her. I got to visit this church and see what's really going on.
Hmm.
And so I visited one Sunday and I just got hooked. I went every Sunday and every Wednesday night for an entire month in a row. And
Wow.
then at the end of the month, the Lord just told me to join the ministry. I had no promise that that was the place of purpose and destiny. There was nothing to suggest that Bishop E.L. Usher was going to necessarily license me and later on ordain me. But I just simply followed the lead of the Holy Spirit and what God was telling me, and trusted him with the results.
Oh my goodness. There's so much to pull out of that. Did y'all hear that she said when she discovered her calling, she had to analyze where she was and say, can this place and can I grow to what I feel like God is leading me to where I am? And I'm sure that wasn't an easy decision to go, you know, to a new ministry, but sometimes things work for us because we don't know who we are. And then
Right,
once we discover who we are and some things are birthed in us and activated in us, then we can identify where we should be. And I've been in that experience when, you know, God was growing me and developing me. And I knew that where I was not feeding me the way I needed to be fed,
right,
was not stretching me and growing me and putting me around people that I needed to be around. And the fact that you had the courage to say, you know what? It's time for me to move. I'm in a season where I need to be repositioned in a place where I
right.
can grow. I think it's something that people listening should take away from that, because I believe a lot of people miss uh, vital opportunities for growth because they refuse to move, because they're
Sure.
afraid of what's going to happen if they move or if they leave, or upsetting people. And I believe everything should be done decently and in order, with
Yes.
respect to those who you are over. But at the same time, sometimes God has us in a place for a season, and then he
Right.
moves us into a new place. Did you have a mentor as you began to develop in your call?
Actually, I did have a mentor. Her name is Pastor Betty Davis. She's still my spiritual mother and a vital mentor in my life. I have invested in additional mentorship to help perfect the pastoral calling on my life and to perfect my gifts. And currently, Apostle Barbara R. Thomas is mentoring me from afar at this current season as well. And so I am a big believer that you need mentorship. You need mentorship to further your career. You need mentorship to grow and develop in ministry. Anything that you feel you are called to and you want to be the best that you could possibly be at it, you need to invest in mentorship. The purpose of mentorship is to shorten the road, to shorten the challenges, to shorten the hardships. Let somebody come alongside you and share where they have been, what they have experienced, and that will save me some unnecessary trouble and unnecessary trials.
Yes.
And in return, I've been willing, as I've been an associate pastor, I've been willing to mentor others, mentor other women coming into ministry, those who feel like there's a fivefold calling, but they don't know quite where to start. I've done that and sowed those seeds forward. And I think it's important that we do that in ministry.
Absolutely. I did a podcast on last week that was talking about being mentored by a man and things of that nature. And some women have hard time finding a female mentor. How would you suggest someone would go about seeking mentorship?
One of the best things that you could do, especially if you're seeking a mentor in a ministry or a church, especially one that you belong to, you need to do it very prayerfully and very carefully. If you first join the ministry, take some time to sit back and observe the dynamics between the senior leader and his second-tier leadership, as well as his third-tier relationships, his third-tier leaders. Look at the dynamics. Is there an easy flow? Is there respect, mutual respect? How does his leaders handle being rebuked or corrected? How does he, address certain things that need to be addressed? So when things are not done in the spirit of excellence, what is the method that she goes about addressing those things? I think too many times people join ministries and in the excitement of being in a new ministry and new opportunities, they want to jump head in first.
Yes.
But you don't know the culture of this ministry. Yes. You don't know nothing about what all took place before you got there. You don't know what these second-tier, third-tier leaders have really gone through and the price they paid to do what they're doing. And you might not be able to handle this leader's warfare.
Lord, have mercy.
And I see this a lot. I've seen this a whole lot play out. A lot of times we invite people into warfare that they are not spiritually or emotionally mature enough to handle. So my thing is, if you want the position, can you handle my burden? Can you handle the warfare?
You better
because when I was a minister, that warfare was a lot less than when I became an ordained associate pastor.
Preach today. Preach. You have said
we don't understand that.
My God. Yes, because people get so caught up with getting the attention. And we have so many times where we enter into a ministry with so much brokenness and we're anxious, to get a title and to be close to the leaders, to feel that we are someone, to feel that we're important. And like you said, they don't take, the Bible says, count the costs. You have to count the cost before you begin building. Count the cost. Look at the investment. Look at the sacrifice. Look at, the discipline that is going to be required. So while you're trying to get close to a leader, I love the way you explain that. And I've never heard someone say that before, that you need to analyze the leadership and the second tier and third tier leaders and look at how they interact, because that also can help you from getting hurt. Because sometimes you don't realize that, a leader may be controlling or, a criticizing person, or they may have abusive tendencies until you start observing how they interact with other people. So it could be beneficial to help you prepare and beneficial to help you avoid some possible church hurt. And so I think that is amazing advice. And I think that we need to understand the spiritual requirement that comes with climbing that ladder. What was your experience like moving from when you first entered into this ministry to becoming associate pastor?
Actually, it was really diverse. It really and truly was. Because when I first came in, I did start off in the sound booth. My pastor asked if I was willing to help out. And the funny thing about that is when I joined Greater Grace, I knew the calling of my life. But yet, when I was asked to help out in the sound booth, I was not offended by that. It was a legitimate need of the ministry, and I was more than willing to do it. And so I think sometimes what we have to think about is, if you feel a position is beneath you to serve in because you know what God has ultimately said about your purpose and your destiny, you may be missing out on your process to destiny because you're saying no to the beginning. That was just the beginning. But quickly after that, I was asked to be a part of the pastoral care team. Then I was asked to be the lead of the pastoral care team. And then I became an armor bearer to my first lady when she had speaking engagements. And then my pastor asked me to personally assist him be his administrator for his ministerial training classes and to be the lead for that. And all this time, I wasn't looking for all that. I wasn't praying for all that, but yet God had a plan. And I do believe that with all my heart, that when I was asked to serve in that sound booth, it was a test. Was I willing to start in a small place and trust God with where he had to take me? And I thank God that I've served there. I've also served on my leader's executive team for a season. And I'm grateful for every position that I've served in because it prepared me for my now. It taught me how a leader really thinks, how a senior leader really thinks. Versus the people in the pews, and they think that they know what decisions are being made, and they think they know why those decisions are being made. But until you walk closely with a senior leader, and you're being mentored by them, and you're being groomed, and you've been invited into the rooms where these conversations are taking place and these decisions have to be made, you realize you don't know a fourth of what you think that you know. It's so many different things the leaders have to consider, you know, before they make major decisions. And they have to consider the flock that God has called them to lead. They can't do what so-and-so is doing down the street because that's not their assignment. And they may be pastoring a totally different church with a totally different dynamic and totally different personalities. And so I thank God for my journey.
My God, that was so much meat in there that I want to pull out. One of the things that you said that I want to bring back or bring to the listeners' attention is that you said I was tested to see if I could start in a small place, because we have to understand that though God shows us where we're called to, if he was to throw us in that right now, we would drown. We would be destroyed. We would not be able to handle the pressure and the requirement for where God is leading us to. But in our minds, because we know I'm called to this big thing, we already start to try to embody where we see ourselves going, rather than being honest about the fact that there's still a lot of processing that has to take place. I think about in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, when it says that you do not sow the body that shall be, but you're sowing grain. And in order for that grain to become the fruit, the wheat, it has to die. The seed has to die first. And so we have to go through a process where God really kills that pride, and he kills that flesh and that entitlement that allows us to be now in the position for him to actually grow us. And so when we first start, we're not even fully going into growing yet. I believe that we start and we go and we die. Then after we die, we can really grow. After some stuff falls off of us, then we can grow. Because a seed cannot grow until it first dies. So when you put it in the ground, it starts to go into the death process. Then it goes into the growth process. And
Right.
so for many of us, we get in a position and we want to immediately start growing, but God will put us in a situation that causes some things to die first so that he can actually start to grow us. And all of those things. And I want people to get what you said, that people in the congregations don't really understand all that goes into being a senior leader, how many areas you have to consider,
Right.
how many burdens you carry, and how stressful it can be, and how you're doing your very best to do what's best for everyone, and sometimes it doesn't look like that to the other people, on the other side,
Right.
you know. But because you were able to start in the small place, you had gathered such a vast amount of knowledge and experience, which is really what a pastor is that you have
Yes.
to know some of everything,
Right.
to be able to properly lead. And God knew what he was doing. He was positioning you to
Right.
be able to handle where you are now. And I believe that, even still, he's still moving you further in this
Yes.
calling. But what you said was so spot on. And I just want to make sure
Yes.
no one leaves this broadcast without knowing that you need to be able to start in a small place, that
Yes.
you should never be so big and so, think you're so gifted that you can't serve where needed. Okay. Because no one's going to entrust you with greater responsibility if you have no care about what the needs of the ministry are. Not
True.
about your needs, not about your title, but the needs of the ministry. What is one of the most challenging experience that you faced in ministry?
Actually, if it's okay with you, I can actually name two.
Sure, sure.
One that really, I was really surprised and took me quite some time to learn how to deal with was the long line of goodbyes that
Mm,
no one tells you anything about. And I found myself a lot of times ended up in what I felt like a devastating place
wow.
because I had people that I served with and broke bread with, and I had been in their homes, and they had been in my home, and we had shared our hearts together, and we had served together, and we had bore each other's burdens. And then, for whatever reason, their part in the journey ends, and they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I had many experiences like that since I've been serving in ministry, period. And it took me a lot of years to get to the place where I had to understand that a part of this walk I have to do alone.
Mm,
Just like Jesus had to go to the Garden of Gethsemane alone
mm,
and wrestled with his soul.
yes.
I have to go through certain things alone. It's a part of my destiny. It's a part of God's plan
Yeah.
to get me into the designated place. But
Mm-hmm.
that was so hard to accept when it first started.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I would have to say is that you don't always have the support that you feel that you need in ministry. I
Mm,
don't come from a big family. I don't really have any family members that are active in ministry. I'm the only one who has gone to the place of being a pastor.
mm-hmm.
And you don't always have that support. As much as I love my dad, but when I got licensed, my dad didn't come to my licensing or my ordination.
Oh.
And we have a pretty good relationship, but he just didn't understand the significance of the moments and
Mm-hmm.
how much that would have meant to me had he been out there. So there I am giving speeches and helping introduce, people who are being licensed and ordained to different positions. And so many of them had friends and family out there. And here
Mm-hmm.
I am over this, and I didn't have my father out there. I had my spiritual mom, Pastor Betty Davis. I thank God for her because she came to everything to support me. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm sharing that to share that you won't always have the necessary support that you feel that you need
Wow.
from family or friends when
Right.
you go through pivotal moments on this journey. But
Yes.
yet I had to put that aside and still get in front of people and smile and welcome everyone and love on them and congratulate them. But I was really kind of brokenhearted
Mm.
because I was trying to get my dad to understand just how significant that moment was to
Yes.
me.
Yes.
And so I just want, others to know sometimes you will have to walk part of this road alone, but God is with you. He will never leave you or forsake you.
Yes.
The Bible tells us in 2 Peter, first chapter, to make our calling and election sure.
Yes.
And so when we are standing in front of the church and we are being prophesied over and the oil is flowing and we are surrounded by our brothers and sisters in Christ, it is easy to get excited about the word that is being spoken. But what is hard is when I leave the doors of that church and I have to go back into the real world and deal with whatever I'm facing there and
Yes.
still believe that what God said in the light is true in the dark.
Yes.
And I want everyone to understand that the words that have been spoken over your life, they will be tested, they must be tested, and they will be proven.
Yes.
And so you have to stay in place, stay in the place God has assigned you,
Yes.
stay faithful, stay committed, stay prayerful. And sometimes you just have to set your face like a flint and say, no matter who leaves, no matter who comes, I'm going to stay in the will of God. I'm going to hold on to his unchanging hand. And I believe that God has not changed his mind concerning what he has spoken over my life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I could definitely relate to you on that. Even when my husband and I began Liberate, people didn't all understand. Everyone didn't understand. Everyone didn't celebrate us. Everyone didn't get the
Right.
vision that God had given us. And it was very painful. It was very painful to be excited about something and finally get excited, because I wasn't at first,
Right.
but when you finally get to that place where you're excited about what God is doing, and to see uh, certain people not support or not understand or not value what God is doing, that is a very challenging thing and a painful
Yes,
thing. And for
it
some
is.
people, that will make them quit. For some people,
True.
they'll back out of it because they're saying, if I have to do this alone, or if I don't have my family support, I'm not going to do it. But I really believe that it's just like what Jesus told the man who said, I need to bury my father. And he said, let the
Right.
dead bury the dead. We have to go. We have to keep it moving. And if we are not willing to forsake, everyone else, which means, simply make God priority over them,
Yes.
then we're not ready for this journey. We're not ready for this
True.
calling, because as you said, some parts of this journey has to be taken alone. Sometimes, Moses had to leave everyone and go up into that mountain.
Yes.
And sometimes God requires that you pull away from the crowd and you just be with him, so that he can show you things and he can teach you things. And you're in a position where you have
Right.
no other choice but to lean on him. And I believe if God didn't make us go through those lonely seasons and those painful seasons, that we wouldn't truly know how to lean and depend on him as we should, to
True.
prepare us for that next place. So for those of you who are listening, whether you're in ministry or whether you're in corporate America or entrepreneurship, you're always going to have those phases in your journey where it feels like no one gets it, no one's celebrating you, but you have to journey on anyway. You cannot
Yes.
stop. You cannot turn to the left or to the right, but you have to go forward, be strong and courageous, for God goes before you. Don't allow people's lack of celebration or acceptance make you question what God said. Don't let that make you
Right.
question whether or not God is really with you and whether he has truly called you to this. Because if you're always moving based off of what people say, then you're never going to make any progress.
No.
Because people are fickle. They'll celebrate you
Very
one minute,
much.
they'll love you one day, and they can't stand you the next day. So
Exactly.
I can't afford to depend on people, because
Right.
I wouldn't know who I was. Because one minute they're
Right.
supporting, the next minute they're not. So we definitely have to keep our eyes focused on God. And it can be a lonely, very lonely journey. I mean, what you said about people leaving and your heart hurting, man, that is so real. It's real for your personal life and it's real for ministry life.
Yes.
Even with the members having to leave and go on to a new season and to a new place, it's hard. It's painful. One of the things that my husband and I have always said is that, we don't own anyone. We don't own anyone, and God has a purpose for everyone's life. And so if they're called to leave Liberate Church, we're going to bless them and we're going to pray for them and wish them well, because there's no way I'm going to interrupt or come in between God's plan. Like, I will not be an enemy of God. I'm going to release you into your next season, our next place. And, it's going to hurt. I'm going to be sad. But that's what's helped me be able to cope with people leaving, is just understanding that, God has a journey for them. And sometimes they're just with us for a season. Sometimes they're just called to be in our lives for a little while. But it definitely is one of the hardest parts of pastoring and of being in ministry, is seeing people come and go. Whether it be for a good reason or for a not so good reason, it's definitely challenging. What's one of the most impactful experiences that you think like has kind of shaped you into being the woman that you are today?
Actually, I would have to say, personally assisting my bishop with the minister's training and creating curriculum with him, and him asking me about my opinions about different things and what I've seen and what I think would work. Walking beside him in that, and also being a part of his executive team for a season, those were the most impactful, because I got to listen in on conversations and be a part of conversations that otherwise I would have had no knowledge of, that were actually taking place, that needed to take place, and that explained the why behind a lot of decisions and why they were made and why they had to be made that way.
Yes.
I think a lot of times we think that we know what it would be like to be a pastor just because we serve in a ministry, just because we're a leader over an auxiliary or we're a team lead. We think that we know what it's like to pastor, but you don't. I would tell anyone, if you feel like you are called to be a senior leader, then really prayerfully seek the Lord and ask for an opportunity to serve either as an executive pastor, an associate pastor, an assistant pastor, or an elder. Because that's not going to give you the full idea of what it's like to be a senior leader, but that's going to give you the closest idea and vision of what it's like without actually being one.
Absolutely.
Because people think, well, I know what it's like to deal with pressure, and I know what it's like to deal with stress, and I know what it's like to deal with disgruntled people, and I know what it's like to deal with warfare. But that level of warfare and stress and pressure that you're talking about is not the same level of heart attack mode that comes with being a senior leader.
Yes.
And when I just think about the pressures and the stress that I have felt just being an associate pastor, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know how Bishop does it sometimes, but yet I know that God has called him and graced him to do it. And so that's how he does it.
Yes, absolutely. You said some amazing, very insightful things. And so I want to ask you this, especially with us being in this year with this pandemic, so many changes have taken place quickly.
Yes.
And pastors we've had to be able to pivot quickly and not lose momentum, learn to do church differently, be more innovative, be more creative. Yes. What are some ways that those who are in leadership, now I'm not talking to, the congregants who may just watch every once in a while online, but the ones who are surrounding their pastors, who are working with them closely, what are some things that they can do to just help support their pastors at this time?
One of the main things, continue to support the ministry that you are a part of financially. Yes. Continue to tithe and give. Yes. Even though people are not coming into the building, that building has a mortgage or it has a lease on it. The
Mm-hmm.
lights still have to be paid every
Yes.
month. The water still has to be paid. There may be staff
Okay.
on board that still have to be paid.
Yes.
So number one, please continue to support your ministry with your offerings and your gifts. Another thing, find out what areas of help that your leader needs. Because some pastors, they may not always come out and say what they need. But
Mm-hmm.
when you, especially when you walk close with your leader, you can feel the burden of a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
So reach out to your pastor, text them, call them, and if you have that kind of relationship with them, and offer to do certain things that would help ease the burden. So right now we can't go and visit anybody in the hospital, but I sure can pick up the phone and check on Sister so-and-so and see how it's going.
Yes.
I can check on people that I know may be elderly and they're living by themselves and they're lonely.
Mm-hmm.
And they're feeling down because they can't see their family and they can't go to church, and
Right.
they're wondering how much longer they're going to have to go through this.
Yeah.
So we can help out by reaching out to one another,
Mm-hmm.
loving on one another, checking on those that we know that we need to check on for whatever reason that they might have going on. And also support your leaders when they come on live on Instagram or come on Facebook or whatever. Support them in attendance as well, because when you're sharing live, that helps drive momentum, and then more people will come and chime in and see what's going on.
Yes.
So those are some of the main ways that I would advise leaders that are serving in any church or ministry to do, and I'm certainly doing those things myself.
Amen. That's wonderful advice. I agree 1,000,000% with everything you said. One of the things that can be exhausting for a pastor is when when people don't just come to you and help, where you have to beg them to do it, or you have to instruct them to do everything. Some of the most valuable leaders are those who do what needs to be done, or like you said, come to the leader to check to see if there's anything else that needs to be done, versus just waiting until someone calls and says, hey, can you do this or that? Because that's kind of expected from higher level leadership, that you're in tune with the needs of the ministry and that you're taking that initiative to help ensure that the church keeps moving forward. Have you ever felt that being a woman has made your journey more challenging?
Actually, since I've been a minister and became a pastor later on, I haven't felt that way, in the sense of my pastor has no problem with women being in leadership at any capacity in ministry. So I have never felt that way concerning him or concerning any opportunities that I've been given. But I have had to deal with some men in ministry that have not always been open to a woman being over ministerial departments or, leading certain ministries. And actually, I'll share a funny story with you. It was someone that was a part of the ministry, and they were going through the process of actually trying to become a deacon during the time. And so they had some concerns and some questions about something that was going on. And instead of coming directly to me, they went to one of my counterparts, actually with the executive pastor. And the thing is, but I'm over the ministerial department. I'm the one that's creating the licenses and the ordinations that you're going to receive.
Yeah.
But they went to him to tell him something about how they felt that I was dealing with something, as if the executive pastor was over me, but we're pretty much on the same level.
Right.
So I've experienced that kind of stuff. And for other women in ministry, I would just have to say, you know what? Everyone is not going to be excited about your position. Everyone's not going to agree that you should be in that position.
Right.
But my answer to that is, just like the Apostle Paul, nevertheless, by the grace of God, I am what I am. So it doesn't matter if you agree with it, doesn't matter if you like it or not. It's still the position that I hold. Mm-hmm. I will be respectful. I will be nice, but at least then I know my place.
Yes.
You know what I mean? As far as it is with that person, I know how they think and I know how far to interact with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. He kind of just showed you, showed his hand, showed how he was. But I think that is a wonderful thing that you had that opportunity to go into a ministry that took time to develop you and pour into you, and
Yes,
was not concerned male, female. You're a vessel of God. You're called by God. We're going
yes,
to develop you and help you to grow to reach your full potential. And that's what our goal is at our ministry as well. And so people don't realize what they're missing out on when they refuse to pour into women, because there are even more women that are available and that are willing in the house that can be poured into and developed. And so you really kind of shoot yourself in the foot, because
definitely.
you're understaffed when you don't have to be. You have all these
Right.
amazing anointed women that you could be developing and growing into who God has called them to be. So I pray for other ladies who are in situations that aren't like that. What advice would you give to the woman who knows that knows their call, and knows that there's a call on her life, but feels discouraged and overlooked, who may not have the experience that you have where she's under a leader that's willing to pour into her?
My advice in that situation would be to really take some time out, go on a consecration, and really spend some time with the Lord, get in the Word of God like never before, and seek some outside counsel. Especially if you're in a ministry where you know there's a bottleneck when it concerns women in their calling. Do those three things, because what you have to consider is, should I give any person, even my leader, the power to determine how far I go into my destiny in God?
Woo!
Because you can take 2, 3, 5 years and pray about the situation. But if this leader has had that training of thought for the last 30 or 40 years, they may never change.
Ooh.
And so you have to look at the situation. Am I willing to jeopardize my purpose and destiny and God and what God has told me to do, and wait on someone's heart to change that very well may never change?
Lord have mercy.
So you have to have a hard conversation with yourself. You have to definitely seek outside counsel that you could trust. And I would say in a situation like that, don't try to seek counsel in that church or that ministry.
Yes.
Because that might open up a Pandora's box that you're not ready to address or deal with. And then what if God leads you to do another way? And then that comes to the light that was done.
Yes.
So sometimes you have to use wisdom. God has given us wisdom. It is the principal thing, and that in all our getting, we need to get understanding. And so sometimes we just need to use wisdom and get outside counsel that's removed from the situation. They have nothing to do with it one way or the other, nothing to benefit from it. But they are just genuinely concerned about your purpose and your destiny and what God has called you to do.
Yes, Pastor Cesslye, you are dropping so much wisdom today. I feel the anointing of a mother on you.
Wow.
Such wisdom and a well of love and compassion, but truth. And that's what some people on this broadcast need to hear today. Like you said, you cannot let anyone stop you from the purpose that God has placed on your life. We got to get beyond making people God. I tell people all of the time, when you stand before God, he's not going to hear, well, I couldn't do what you told me to do because they wouldn't let me. That's not going to be a valid excuse. We are all given a purpose, and we're responsible for stewarding it properly. And being in a place that is going to quench you and stop you and discourage you from being who God has called you to be, for something as simple as gender. As simple as gender. That is a simple thing. That's not, we're not talking about character. No. We're not talking about your experience level, but because of the way you were born that you had no control over, you were born female. And because of that, you are disqualified from this purpose. I don't care what God told you, you just can't do it. Like that, we have to really, like you said, use wisdom.
Yes.
And we need to do some self-evaluation and determine if we are seeing our leaders in the right light, if we are really respecting and honoring them as a leader, but still holding God as the higher authority.
Yes.
And so I love the way that you just came straight for it and you told them this is what you need to do. And I thought it was great advice that you said seek outside counsel.
Yes, outside counsel.
Because they can get messy.
It can
be very messy if you go to someone, and a lot of times people will think they can trust this certain individual, but at the end of the day, sometimes ministry can be a little cutthroat. And if they feel like they can get an edge over you, they just might, tell your business. So I think that's a great wisdom to seek outside help and to make sure that you're in the position where God needs you to be. At the end of the day, I tell some people too, and I pray that this blesses somebody who's listening. Yes. There are some things that cannot be activated in you until you're in the right place. And so even if you know that there is a particular gifting or calling on you, until you get into the right place, under the right leadership, around the right people, in the right culture, that's not going to be cultivated and it's not going to be activated because you don't have need for it where you are. And some of y'all are going to travel to these conferences and you're coming back to these dry churches. What is the point? What is the point of traveling to go get filled, and use your gifts and prophesy and all of that? That's wonderful. And then to come back home to your home church and be told that there is no such thing as prophecy or that nobody prophesies anymore. And women, you can't do anything. Like, what is the point? You're really just frustrating yourself even more because you see what you could become, but then you go back to a place that tells you you can't be that. And so take some time, listen to the woman of God, listen to her wisdom, listen to her experience, and take some time and consecrate yourself so you can ensure that you're sober emotionally and spiritually, and you're able to hear God clearly and make an informed decision based off of the instruction of God and not off of the instruction of men. Absolutely seek wise counsel that is not partial, that can't benefit from your decision. Somebody that has no benefit, no investment on the situation, that could just give you an unbiased word of wisdom and advice about what you need to do. That's all we have for you all today. I was truly, truly blessed by Pastor Cesslye. I thank you so much, Pastor Cesslye, for being on this broadcast with me on today. This time just flew by so fast. I can't believe we're already at the end, but it's just so easy to just sit and listen to you talk because you have so much wisdom. And I just thank you for taking time out of your schedule, out of your day, to pour into the listeners and the viewers of this podcast. I don't take it for granted, and I'll definitely be pulling on you in the future. So maybe we can discuss some other things, but I really appreciate you. And I pray that those of you who are listening, that you were empowered and you were encouraged and enriched in some way. And this is what I want you to do. I want you to listen to Pastor Cesslye. She's going to tell you how you can connect with her so that you can get some more of this wisdom. How can they connect with you, Pastor?
Well, actually, I'm on Facebook, Cesslye Bob, Cesslye, Cesslye, Bob, B-O-B, and parentheses is going to say Pastor Cesslye. And also I'm on IG at Cessbob, Cessbob, and in parentheses it's going to say Pastor Cesslye as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I encourage you all to reach out to her. As I said, she has a wealth of wisdom. She has experience with mentorship. If you are a woman on this broadcast and you're needing a wise voice, definitely connect to this woman of God. We've been connected on social media for a number of
Yes.
years now. And one thing I will say about her is that she is consistent. From the time I met her years ago to now, and consistent and integral. So just reach out to her and connect with her. And
Yes.
I know that your life is going to be blessed and benefited by her life. Thank you to all of our faithful P Square Squad and our new listeners, subscribers, and followers. Thank you for joining me today. And I pray that you continue to spread the word and let people know that we're receiving love and we're receiving learning on this podcast. So spread the word. Don't forget to subscribe. If you haven't already, please make sure that you stay connected. Go to my YouTube channel, Cherie Eddington, subscribe there and follow the Pretty and Powerful podcast on Spotify. We're on Audio Boom, Google Podcasts. I'm trying to get things lined up right on the Apple Podcast, so that will be on there as well. And then you can stay connected with me personally on Facebook or IG at I am Cherie Eddington. The handle is at I am Cherie Eddington. And as always, don't forget, you have the right to be both pretty and powerful. So you don't have to choose. Tongue tied. You have the right to be pretty and powerful. You don't have to choose. So don't just walk in it, honey. Strut in it. Be who God has called you to be. Be your authentic self. And I will see you all on next week. Bye-bye.